Hello and welcome to another episode of the Kurerie podcast. In today's episode, we interviewed Itofa Ivarah, who is a development consultant. His work intersects between designing education intervention for marginalized children and rehabilitating internally displaced persons in Nigeria. Itofa is also the founder of My Niger Food Bank Initiative and Church on the Street, where he has raised over $16,000 for community impact projects in Nigeria. Itofa is the recipient of the Oxfam Hunger Heroes Award for his contribution to tackling food insecurity in Nigeria. Itofa's story is really interesting, and his journey into the social impact and development world is even more interesting. So I hope that you learn from his story today and you understand how he got to where he is. I hope that you enjoyed today's episode. Thank you.
My name is Itofa Ivarah, and you're listening to Kurerie podcast.
Hi, Itofa. Thank you very much for joining us today. Welcome to the Kurerie podcast. We're very excited to speak to you, to learn more about you, your work, and the impact that you have made. But yeah, we'll start off with our first question, which we ask all our guests. And that is, could you tell us about yourself, your journey, what drives you, and what has led you down this path of social impact and development?
Thank you very, very much, Chizulu. Atoshi, good evening again. Great honor to be here today. So my name is Itofa Ivarah. I'm a non-profit management consultant by day. One of my passion really is to see how I could just change the lives of children in some of the most underserved communities in Nigeria. That's been my dream since I was probably like 16 years old. I've had that dream in my heart that, one day I'm going to build food banks. I'm going to give kids. I'm going to build a free school for children across, Africa and the global south. That's been my passion. But what really delved me into social impact and, championing zero hunger and working to reduce poverty in Nigeria is actually my story growing up as a kid. I was not born into opulence. I was one of those kids that you would call just blessed. I don't use the word lucky, but I was really blessed, irrespective of the fact that I didn't have the most smooth experience growing up as a kid. One of the things I knew I enjoyed was access to education. My parents prioritized it, even though they didn't have a lot. Education was so prioritized in my family, and it kind of expanded my horizon to possibilities around what I could become and what I could do in my community. So I went from being a kid who was hungry as a child to feeding hungry children today. I went from a kid who was out of school because I couldn't afford tuition to being the kid who's building schools today to give girls in some of the most remote communities in Nigeria access to education. So if you ask me, I'm just the guy who God really just changed his story.
I love that. And I think your story is really inspiring. I've been following you on LinkedIn for a while, and hearing about your journey into social impact, into creating your two organizations, Church on the Street and My Niger Food Bank, was very interesting for me. So I know about it, but could you tell our listeners a bit more about how you started Church on the Street and My Niger Food Bank?
All right. I'm like, this is like Church on the Street and My Niger Food Bank are like my babies. Every time I get an opportunity to talk about them, very excited. Church on the Street started in my second year at the University of Benin, Nigeria. My dream was to become a medical doctor. I wanted to become a doctor, Dr. Itofa. He was entering. So that was the goal. Become a medical doctor, make some dollars, marry a beautiful wife. That was the goal. That was the dream. But trust me, God had other plans. I ended up not getting medicine at the University of Benin. Guess what? They threw me to the Faculty of Education.
Oh, wow.
That was where, I studied education, So, but what I never understood was the fact that I was working on a script that had already been written before me, right? And my dream and my passion, even though I was growing up as a kid, was, to build schools, feed children, get kids back into a better life. So when I would get into university my second year, this passion was burning. It kept burning. And I was lucky to meet a couple of my friends who we used to study together. And I said to them, look, you know what if we can do XYZ, like go to schools, go to orphanage homes? We didn't have money at that time. We didn't even know what fundraising was. We didn't even understand that there was an economy called the social entrepreneurship economy. We didn't even understand that there's what you call non-profit. I had zilch knowledge about these things, but for some reason there was something on my inside that was tugging me and pulling me towards this path of sustainability and zero hunger and tackling poverty. Long story cut short, 16th of June 2018, we founded Church on the Street. Myself, 4 friends, and 4,000 naira. For those people who are not in Nigeria, 4,000 naira is less than $10 today. That's what we started Church on the Street with. But I had a vision, I had a dream that a day will come where these solutions that we're preferring to economies or to communities that were not very, very, advantaged stage will be stories that we'll share on global platforms. I had a dream that I would share the same stories on a TEDx stage. I had dreams that I would share this story on platforms like the UN SDGs. I had these stories that I would speak to Oxfam and all these things. But it started with 4,000 naira, 4 friends, and a very big dream that we could change the world. And that's how we started Church on the Street. And without any experience, I started learning on the job. Today, I speak to you 4 years later. We've raised over $12,000 in funding. We currently have over 1,000 volunteers in the organization. By the grace of God, spoken at the Global Food Bank Council in Ireland, spoken on a TEDx stage, gotten awarded by Oxfam. God takes all the glory, but that's like where we started from. That was my cradle and my little beginning.
Oh my gosh, I'm already thinking of a line for the article that we're going to publish on our website. And that's from 4,000 naira and 4 friends and a big dream to $12,000 and over 1,000 or 10,000 volunteers. And
I didn't add that we're currently serving 8,000 families in Nigeria.
Wow. Okay, you see, I love that you started with basically no knowledge of it, and you didn't think, oh, let me learn about this a bit. Let me learn about this a bit. You didn't keep pushing yourself and thinking that, okay, this is not something that I can achieve because I don't have the background, I don't have the knowledge, but you just had dream. And as you said, that voice nudging you on and saying that this is something that you do to help people. So I love your story. And I think that it will definitely inspire a listener somewhere who is probably in the same shoes as you, who thinks that, okay, I don't have a lot, or I have this passion to help people, to make a change. So thank you very much for telling us about that. And I already know a bit about the mission and vision of Church on the Street and my Nigeria Food Bank. You stated it a bit more. So if you'd like, you could tell us a bit about what your goals are. But then I would also like to ask you a question which raises a few question marks for people that have been on the podcast in the past. And as I always say, we don't do failure here. We don't describe anything as failure. We could say it's a setback or it's a learning experience.
Sure. Love it.
Yeah. We don't say failure, we don't say regrets. So after you tell us a bit about the mission and vision of your two organizations, we'd like to know what is that your greatest learning experience or setback that you've had as you started and run these organizations, and how did you solve or react to it?
Problem. Thank you very much, Izulu. First of all, our mission at Church on the Street is very, very simple. We want to be able to give food to hungry children. We also want to be able to support female entrepreneurs who are living in rural communities. Chizu, you'll be stunned at what 20,000 naira, probably 10 them, let's say $50, $100 can do for a family. We literally transform a family. There are families right now as I speak to you in Benue State, Nigeria, who on a daily basis, they don't know where their next meal will come from. Just in November, I was in Benue State for the IDP project that we had. For people who don't know what IDP is, IDP are internally displaced persons. There are currently 11,000 IDP dwellers in Benue State who are victims of Boko Haram and Fulani herdsmen. They've lost families, loved ones, their homes, and they were living in makeshift tents. Just today, we're doing the analysis, and over 26,000 people have watched our documentary that we published just a couple of weeks ago on YouTube and Instagram. And here's the interesting thing. Our mission is to be able to reach those families like that. I remember Mrs. Vivian's story. There's the twins in the IDP camp who at 6 months old were chronically malnourished and at the verge of dying. We're set up as an organization at Church on the Street to reach babies like Joseph and Jonathan at the IDP camp. There are tons of stories. I hope there are times to share stories as we move on. So our mission is to serve communities, empower communities to become self-sustaining, provide access to education for children in remote communities, and finally, we're a faith-based nonprofit to also provide and share the gospel of Jesus to communities in these places. And then my Nigeria Food Bank, our mission is very simple. In July 2022, having done Church on the Street for 4 years, I realized that, look, there was a connecting dot between malnutrition and the retention rate of children in rural schools. We realized that children were not staying in schools because they were hungry. Is it possible that if we solve the problem of ensuring these kids don't have to walk long distances, for instance now, just to go and sell something or just to go and help their mother hawk something, they could come to school and have access to meal? Is it possible that if we close that gap, more children will stay in school, numeracy and literacy will increase, and the dreams will become valid? What about the girls who have to walk long distance to go and get water? Is it possible that if we do clean pipeline water in their community, we could close that gap? And these girls, rather than going long distances in Benue State or in Ibadan or in Ekiti, going to walk long distances, they could just get water immediately and come to school. And so our mission is to, provide food, we became the first mobile food bank in Nigeria that is serving local schools across Nigeria. So we identify schools who we know that they are very disadvantaged and in some of those remote communities, and we put them under our school meal plan, and we provide food for the children. And we've seen that there's such a dramatic increase of performance, retention rate. There is now an association of, look, in school I'll get food, so I'm excited to go to school. What's happening is that we're increasing the retention rate of children in school from 19.3% that was in 2021 to 39% 9.2% as of 2023. So that's pretty much what our mission is, and that's what we're trying to do. And we trust God that in the future we'll be able to reach more children, hopefully serving millions of children, and have a chain of food banks and build multiple schools across Nigeria, in the future.
Thank you very much, Itofa. And I always try to take, well, not notes, but I try to jot things down when I do these interviews. And something that you said, it has 3 exclamation marks next to it, is that your organizations ensure that these communities are self-sustaining. And I don't know about now, but at some point it would have been common practice for non-profits to go to these communities to do maybe a one-off event or activity and then leave and then never come back. And then the communities go right back to stage one. So I think it's really important, the work that you're doing, that you're ensuring that, yes, we're helping these people through our events, our activities, through our outreaches. And we're trying to make sure that when we leave, they can continue to live a sustainable life, to live a good life, basically. So I think that that's really important. And another thing you said, which I think is also, I've said important alone, but yes, I think it's important, is how you started My Nigeria Food Bank. And it's interesting that, and I think this is something that every young founder of an impact project should keep in mind. They should always assess the work that they're doing. And you assess the work that you were doing with Church on the Street, and you say, okay, this is a gap, and Church on the Street might not be able to fill this gap. Why not create another organization that can do that? And your work is all connected. You're doing your work with Church on the Street, but with My Nigeria Food Bank, it's sort of adding on to the work that you're doing, and it's ensuring that it's still connected to the aim of Church on the Streets, of ensuring that education is accessible to young children. So yes, I have to give you props for the work that you're doing, and the numbers you gave me were outstanding. So it also shows that the small things that you do really do add up and really do make a difference. So thank you for that. Okay, my next question was actually on your biggest setback. So if you could just tell us a bit about that.
All right, thank you, Chiselu. So, here's the interesting thing. When you talk about sustainability, I think that's one of the things that's stopping a lot of people from starting out. I mentioned earlier when I started that I had no prior knowledge of running I didn't even know there was something called non-profit.
Yeah.
I'd never heard the term NGO in my life, but I knew there was a burning passion in my spirit and something was galvanizing me to want to go and help communities, right? So, in terms of setback, money was a problem. Chiselu, I hate asking people for money. I don't know how to tell somebody, please give me money to go and pay somebody's tuition or give me money to go and I don't know how to do that. So it was a huge struggle. I had to learn to ask. And trust me, when we started, we were not registered as an corporate organization. We didn't have a corporate bank account. It was just me and a bunch of people who just had passion. But guess what? What happened? A lot of people would want to say, look, you guys are doing incredible stuff, but forget. That's how people used to say they want to do NGO. They'll be eating people's money. I'm sorry, I can't help you. We got a ton of no's from so many people. And at some point, I kind of felt like, gosh, how are we going to even achieve this thing we want to do? Mm-hmm. But then I learned the power of persistence, right? So in the very first place, a lot of people did not believe that what I was doing was valid, what I was doing was feasible, what I was doing was even going to make sense. Even me, I didn't believe what I was doing was going to make sense. You know how they say a one-eyed man in the land of the blind is something. I didn't even know where I was going to, but I was leading people that look, what will change the world, will do X, Y, Z, yada, 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 and all that stuff, right? So the biggest challenge I had was how to raise money. It was a big problem because we needed money to support community, we needed money to give grants, we needed money to do a lot of stuff, and it was such a rough early phase. But guess what? I learned the power of the good ask. I learned the power of persistence. I learned the power of learning how to communicate your vision until your vision consumes you as a founder. Mm-hmm. I'm telling you, nobody would believe what you're doing. Mm-hmm. There were so many people I thought that, look, I know a lot of people who give me money. Like if I share this idea, I'll get a check of $1,000 here, £1,000. Chiselo, nobody. They did not even, they say, well done, God bless the works of your hand. That was what they said to me. Yeah. They didn't help me. And I was upset for a very long time until one day, I'm a Christian, a very firm faith believer, and the Holy Spirit said to me, look, Itofa, if I needed them to help you, they wouldn't have had any choice. But look at how far you've come without their help. So I just want to put a caveat that, look, you may not have all the skill set yet. You may not even understand what self-sustainability is, like Chisel talks about. But look, if you want to start something, please go ahead and start.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. And, when you said that you don't like asking for money, it rang true because I am also in that boat. I don't know what the problem is, but I feel uncomfortable asking for like it's different if it's like, you know, a grant application or something like that. But going to sell a story to someone, it's a bit more difficult. So I totally get where you're coming from on that note. But I also love how you're still encouraging people to be persistent. And another thing that you said that really stood out to me was the fact that like you have to believe in your vision. And if you don't believe in what you're fighting for, what you're working towards, like no one else will. You will not be able to convince anyone of it. So I think that that's another really important thing for young people to notice, even beyond like social impact work in anything you're doing. If you don't believe in it, like no one will believe in it. And you know, when you were talking about how like you were not comfortable like asking people for money, it reminded me of like a conversation I had with another young person in the impact industry, and she said that like you have to be confident in asking for things. And I totally agree with that, because to be honest, if you ask, the worst thing that will happen is that someone will say no, and no can kill you. So I think that it's very important, as you said, to be persistent and to just keep trying, and no matter like the responses you get, just keep it pushing, I guess. But yeah, thank you very much.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. And like now we're talking about like your sort of biggest setback. And I know that from what you said, you've achieved a lot through these two organizations. You've helped so many people. But in all these things that you've been able to achieve, and in all these people you've been able to help, what would you say has been like your biggest success as a founder of Church on the Street and My Niger Food Bank?
There's so many stories, Chizulu. There's like a plethora of stories. Every year, it just keeps getting better. And you know, the interesting thing is that when I started out as Church on the Street, I didn't start out to be this guy who would eventually would start a consulting practice by the side, who would get the opportunity to travel to all these places and speak on all these places and meet all these people. That was never even in the picture. I didn't even know that stuff like that even could happen. My greatest achievement would be the people that every day we get to see smiles on their faces. A practical example I'm going to share with you. We have the story of Mrs. Efionwan, one of the mothers first met in Benin City. She was a homeless woman in Benin City who had like 6 children. And we heard her story, and it was so captivating that a woman who is supposed to be so disadvantaged had such great resilience. This woman was homeless with 6 children, but every single night she would, beg during the day. The seed capital she raises, she uses it to buy polythene bags and sells them at night to provide dinner for her children, and also ensure that she tries to pay tuition for the kids. And because I had learned the ethics of storytelling, I asked myself, how do we amplify this woman's strength when we tell her story? That's something a lot of non-profits do not understand. They keep dehumanizing their beneficiaries. We said, how do we tell her story in such an incredible way that would inspire people that look beyond just being a homeless woman? There's also a story to her life. I kid you not, in less than a week, we raised more than $500,000 for her. Wow. We got her a new apartment, we got her new bedding, we got her kids back into school, we got her groceries, stationaries, we took her children clothing shopping. Her whole documentary is on YouTube. And I look at her before and her after, and I just ask myself, what if there was no church on the street? And so when you ask me what's my greatest achievement, it's the fact that we could have an incredible avenue like Church on the Street that could literally take people's story from one point and give them a whole 360 turnaround, and just also galvanize a community around ourselves to lead change. All the monies that we gave them wasn't my money. It was people from America, people from Nigeria, people in the University of Lagos, people in the University of Ibadan. How can we be a part of her story? And collectively, we could change her life. For me, that's the greatest achievement, to create a system and a platform where everybody can put religion, race, geographical location aside and come together collectively to be a blessing to somebody. That's my greatest achievement, Chizulu.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's an amazing story as well. And like you said, like imagine if there was no church on the street, what would have happened? Like would this woman have gained all that she did? Would her life have turned around? Would her children have gone back to school? And in the future, these children would become, would be able to create change themselves because of the impact that you've made in their lives. So I think that again, the work that you're doing is definitely commendable, and more than commendable even. It's amazing to see the impact that you're creating, again, from something that started with just 4,000 naira, less than $10, and just 4 friends thinking, okay, what can we do to make a change? So again, I really commend you. But
thank you very much, Yuzulu.
You're welcome. Well, we've spoken about your success, your setbacks. Is there anything that you wish you had known when you first started Church on the Street? Because I know that Church Street started before My Niger Food Bank. So what advice would you give to like Itofa, who was in the second year of university university, speaking with his friends and saying, okay, why don't we start this organization?
If there was anything I could tell Itofa back then, University of Benin, Faculty of Pharmacy, 12 a.m. midnight, preparing for psychology exam, because that was the whole scenario when we had this conversation. We're preparing for psychology exam, 12 a.m., in 200 level. I would say to Itofa, I say, young man, look. First of all, what you're about to do will not just change your life, but thousands of other people. So do not compare. Do not put your hope on any man. Work on increasing your capacity, understanding the depth of the problem you're trying to solve. It's one thing to try to solve a problem on the premise of the emotional and empathic and on an empathic carriage, and than solving the problem based on understanding a clear-cut theory of change, right? But I mean, people don't understand what I'm saying. But what I'm saying is, look, don't solve the problem based on emotion, Itofa. Try to understand the problem. Build a capacity to solve that problem. And don't try to look at Mr. A or Mr. B, what they are trying to do and how they are discouraging you. Just focus on getting the work done. In getting the work done, in showing up on the days you didn't feel like it. Chizulu, there were days, so Church on the Street started off at the University of Benin, right? Yeah. So we have a team in Benin City. But as I speak to you now, we've been able to spread like a franchise into 11 states in Nigeria, right? So there are states in Nigeria that I've never been to, but we've been able to work with the communities and design sustainable projects in those communities. So in my 200 level, when we started, a practical example on why this question you asked is very important and why anybody who is in their startup phase should not give up. Chizulu, we're trying to do a project, and the goal of the project was we wanted to do help girls in Jos, because we had just launched a team in Jos. We had a team of volunteers, and so we wanted to talk to the girls in high school, especially public high school, on career development, leadership, just teach them things out and honestly empower them to want to be able to go out into the world and voraciously create indelible impacts that will change the ecosystem of where they were. And our goal, we wanted to raise 10K, we couldn't raise 10,000 naira. Now 10,000 naira is less than $20, right? Look, Chizulu, we struggled to raise 3,000 naira. 3,000 naira again is less than $10. It was a hustle. It was a hassle. Now, at that time, I told you earlier that I didn't come out of opulence. The economy where I was coming from, it was pretty rough. My parents had 10,000 naira as part of my, I think, semester money. I took 3,000 naira out of that semester money and sent it to the team in Jos, just so they could get stationaries, pencils, and pen, because that was all we could afford to give to the girls to let them know that we believed in them. Those seasons and those experiences when we're asking people to support us to reach out to girls in Jos and nobody was helping us, and it kind of felt what we're doing was stupid. I could have given up and I could have stopped and I could have handed in the towel. But I said to myself, this course we're doing is important. This thing we're doing is important. Look, I said earlier that if your vision doesn't consume you, nobody will believe you. Nobody will be able to write you a check of $1,000 or even write you a check of $10,000 tomorrow. You must have what you call sweat equity. And in having sweat equity, build social capital to prove the work of what you're doing. So when we're doing JAWS, I didn't know a time would come when these same stories I would eventually share it on global stages like TEDx, or even speak at the Global Food Bank Council, or talk to the guys at the United Nations eventually. So even those 3,000 naira story was important for us to experience it. So I would say to Luke, just build capacity, understand the terrain you're about to go on, and don't even look back. Just keep going.
So I think what you said, like, I picked many points from what you said. First off, do not compare. As young people, I think it's inevitable that we find ourselves looking at what other people like us are doing, and if we've sort of reached their level or gotten to their level. So the fact that one of the advice like you're giving your younger self is do not compare is extremely important. And another thing you said was like, do not put your hope on any man, which snaps fingers. I think like in this world, the only person you can trust is really yourself. So it's very important that you stated that for any young person who feels like, okay, they're relying on someone to do something for them, it's always good, again, to have a backup plan. So that's a really important point as well. And then you also said, always go back to the cause. And the like anybody that has been in like the social impact and international development world, especially as a young person, should know how difficult the road or the path to whatever you're trying to achieve is. Youth-led organizations are one of the least funded organizations. There will be a lot of bias. There will be a lot of organizations putting youth in their own organizations basically for optics. There'll be a lot of naysayers saying there's no way that you can achieve this. So I love that you said you should always go back to the cause. So for any young person listening, I hope that whenever they feel like, okay, I don't think I can continue with this, or I'm struggling a bit, I hope that they remember that they can always go back and think about what they're trying to achieve. And hopefully that will like propel them and help them to become them better, I guess, to keep going, to keep pushing, to keep moving forward towards their goal. And then you also
Absolutely.
said, and and then you also said one last thing. I'm sorry, I was noting like everything down that you said, because I think that you made a very, very important point. You said something about building your capacity. And we spoke earlier about how you started off with no knowledge. And that's good. Start off with the little knowledge that you have. But as you go on, you also need to build your capacity and your knowledge bank and your understanding of the cause that you're trying to push, or you're trying to, or the goal that you're trying to achieve. So I really like that you said that. I feel like that's really an underestimated thing. Building your capacity and trying to understand how your idea, your projects could be better, could help people more, could help beneficiaries more is so important. So and then again, another thing is that like when you build your capacity, it would also sort of give you some leverage when you reach out to people concerning your organization, because they would know that, okay, this person has an understanding of this cause or this issue that they're trying to achieve. So thank you very much for that answer. I think I've picked up a lot of things as well.
Thank you, Chizolo.
So we've spoken a bit about Church on the Street. We've spoken about My Niger Food Bank. And you mentioned something that I think I would like you to speak more about, which was about your documentary that you had done. And I know that this is a documentary you've done. Your YouTube channel has a few videos I've seen, but could you just tell us why you thought maybe doing documentaries would be the best form of storytelling for the work that you do with your two organizations?
Interesting. While I was preparing for this podcast, I was actually preparing like a tweet I was going to send out to talk about how we've been able to amass 26,000 views. And the idea is very simple. We wanted to create awareness about the struggles people were going through at the IDP camp. And we knew that we could come and churn out figures to people. But if people don't have a first-hand experience and carry them through an emotional ride of what it really is, nobody may really understand. We also wanted to be able to see how can we begin to collaborate with government to see how we could enforce policy. Because what's going on right now in that state is terrible. And so awareness and also policy reform, and then raise funds for rehabilitation of the community. So these three things are the things we really wanted to do. So we felt that documentary was the best strategy, and it was a huge investment, getting a drone to drafting out the script, going from door to door. We spent a couple of days in the most not so convenient condition in the States, just to be able to go from door to door to hear the real first-hand stories. Maybe you guys could also take some time to also go back and watch that same documentary as well. You could see firsthand the emotional toll these people are going through. In fact, one of the women said to us that, look, we've not had access to a tuber of yam in the last God knows when. You guys were able to bring us a truckload of food items. It's incredible. It's incredible, right? And let me probably not go into that part yet, but basically we chose the documentary part because we knew we could engage with people on an emotional level, visually, viscerally, people would engage in it. And we've been seeing the response, the engagement, the meetings, the calls we've been getting just because of that one documentary.
I've watched some of the documentaries. I watched the documentary on the internally displaced persons in Benue State, and it was definitely interesting to see what these people were going through and to see the impact that you made, the seemingly small changes or things that you brought to them that many people might not really see as a big deal, were like huge deal to them and were life-changing to them. So I would recommend like anyone watch the documentary to just learn more about not only the work you do, but the plight of these internally displaced persons. So yes, and how they can get involved as well. We'll speak more about how people can get involved in your work and connect with you personally as well. But I think on to my next question, we've already established that you are sort of a storyteller, and you make use of storytelling to really drive the message of Church on the Street and My Niger Food Bank forward. And I know that you have a book. It's not necessarily a novel, but it has sort of like tips on, well, no, let me not say what it's about. I'll like hand over, I guess, the invisible mic to you so you could tell us a bit more about your book, what led you to write it, what your goal was with writing it. And
thank you, Chizolo. First of all, you guys asked the best questions in the world. So for starters, if the things I know now, the things I currently do, I learned on the job. Even before talking about going to do masters, all those things, I learned on the job. And I thought to myself, look, look, there are people like myself, especially young people who have these incredible ideas. You don't want to know on a weekly basis how many clarity calls I jump on with people. Since I became an active user on LinkedIn, it feels like almost every other week somebody wants to talk to me about their NGO and the things that they're doing, right? And I told myself, people kept asking me the same questions: mission, storytelling, funding, how do you structure my organization? How do I position myself? How do I become self-sustaining? How do I institutionalize the work that I'm doing? All of this stuff put together. And I thought to myself, you know what, let me just sit down and write a book for these people. And, I wrote the book in mind. I wrote the book to help, especially nonprofit startups, number one. Secondly, 100% of all the royalties that have coming from that book did not come to my account. It went to funding the educations of girls in schools in Nigeria. As I speak to you, over 9 girls have been beneficiaries of all the royalties that have come from that book sale. So it was not even just for my bank account. It was especially to help us get girls back into school, girls especially. So we killed two birds with one stone. We wrote a book to solve the problem for non-profit leaders. We also found a way to, fund the education of girls in schools today, So yeah, interesting story, Chizulu. I had a dream that, look, in my lifetime, yes, I've been kicked out of school because of tuition, but in my lifetime, I would build a school that will fund the education of girls in school. And what happened, interestingly, is the fact that I met this incredible young man called Mr. Zion Oshobe, who's the founder of Clever Minds Foundation, and we partnered with them to build a school. They were in their early phase of still building and were able to come in to jump in on the project. As I speak to you now, they have a free school that holds 250 children in Warri Delta State. At the same time, they also have a STEM center in that school to encourage science, technology, engineering, and math for girls in the school. So it's been an incredible privilege, really, to be able to go through this journey and be a blessing to the work that we do.
And, I think it's very admirable to hear that the profits from your book are going back into your work. So it really just shows that you really have a passion for ensuring that young girls, young children get access to a good education. So yeah, I would, you didn't mention the name of your book. Please tell us the name of your book, the title of your book, and where people can get it.
Yeah, so the name of my book is called The Secrets to Running a Successful Nonprofit Globally. Basically, I think 7 tips, basically, what you need, what are the things you need to start a nonprofit. Many people think you need to have a lot of money. Many people think you need to even understand the problem you're even solving. Nope. And many people also have a myth that, look, all you need is passion to start. Passion will get you started, but passion will not sustain the journey. So I was able to demystify and break it down in the most interesting way that even from one flight from Lagos to Benin or Lagos to Abuja, you'd have finished the whole book and your head would be boiling to go and change the world. So I wrote that book for those people. It's available on Seller. All my links are available on LinkedIn, Instagram. If you just click on my link, it will take you there. It's on Amazon and on Seller, and just for $10. Probably you get a cup of coffee from Starbucks. It would help you, and you'll be changing people's lives, and you'll be changing the lives of girls. So maybe you should think about it.
Yeah. We'll also put the link in our article and everywhere we can, so that people can definitely get it. And I think it would be a good read for any young person who is a bit confused about how to run their non-profit, even if it's not registered, even if it's just an advocacy group, an impact project, just an informal organization that is trying to help people. To definitely help you. And I guess it also answered the questions about finances that many, I'm sure, people are afraid to ask or trying to figure out. So yeah, would highly recommend that you get the book. Please check it out, and also help a girl with her education as well. So as Itofa said, killing 2 birds with one stone. But yeah, okay. So again, I've been following you on LinkedIn for a while now. I don't know how long, but for a bit. And even speaking to you now, I see that you are a very skilled orator, that you speak really well. And you've also been a speaker, as you said, on multiple platforms. Just recently, you were, I believe, at a TEDx event at your old university. So my question is, how have you built your capacity in public speaking? And do you have any tips for anyone listening on how they too can build their capacity in public speaking?
Okay, all right, great. Thank you. Yes, I did speak at TEDx. It was a long time dream I had. I remember in my undergraduate days at the University of Benin, every time I would tell myself, look, I'm a TEDx speaker. Everybody knew. So when you finally have like it kind of felt like the whole world was happy for me because, and this is an interesting thing. When the year started, it was a part of my vision board, and I had traveled to Ireland, and I felt like, oh my gosh, the year is already ending, and I didn't get this dream, And in October, I was just, somewhere in McDonald's when I got the email, and it was so thrilling. And I look back in retrospect, I realized that it's important that you don't play with the little opportunities that you have, whether it's opportunity to speak in your church, local church, your university, even just that ability to be able to host. There are people who talk and there are people who speak. There's a huge difference. People who speak life into you. You leave them reflecting. People who talk just dump a huge chunk of information. There are tools and there are things you need to learn, like cadence of your voice, learning inflection, just ability to be able to enunciate. All of these things collectively come together. But what has helped me over the past is, I love to learn new stuff. I love to know things people my age don't know, right? And so when I'm talking to you, it kind of feels like somebody who's 40 something years old is talking to you. And it's very intentional because I consume a lot of information. And one of like my incredible mentors is Fela Durotoye, or had the incredible gift of just being able to work under him and just even listening to him and gaining to him. And he's one of those people who have inspired me. And there are tools and books that I've read. We have Dale Carnegie's public speaking book. You can get it for like 600 naira from any bookstore. We can watch there are talks on Stanford University YouTube channel on how to communicate. It's very important. Chizuru, communication is an important skill in the future of works. It's non-negotiable. Like, we just don't want you to be able to talk. Can you communicate? Can you clearly give us your idea in a way that you would leave us gobsmacked? It's very important. So for anybody who's listening to me, you're running a non-profit, you think it's for people who want to be a public speaker. It's a lie. You will need it in the coming economy. You will need it. Just that ability to be able to communicate your ideas, talk to people, convince people, sell, pitch. You will need it. So please, for every young person who's listening to me, you're a social entrepreneur, you're just even if working in the for-profit sector, it's important that you're able to crystallize your thoughts and sell those ideas that builds a bridge between yourself and whoever is listening to you that would convincingly want to buy into your vision or the idea you currently have. So yeah.
Yeah. What you said about putting yourself out there and putting yourself in positions where you want to speak, even if it's in your church, if it's in school, it's really important because like a few years ago, I was just like in another interview I did with like a young impact person. I was speaking to her and I told her that as like for a long time, I was very shy and I hardly spoke in public. I could speak if I wanted to, but it was pretty daunting for me. And it wasn't until I was forced into a position where I had to speak and I constantly like had to put myself out there to speak that I got better. And, humble flex, but I went for like a model UN conference once and it was still in my phase where I was still a bit shy and I put my name up to speak in front of like over 10,000 or so students and I was able to do it, and that was just because I had practiced. Speaking to people is practice and it's not something that could happen overnight. Maybe some people could have like the ability to speak in front of a large audience overnight, that's them, but like it's not the same for everybody else. So definitely speaking and practicing, putting yourself in positions where you have to speak, I think is a very good tip for anyone who wants to build their capacity in public speaking. And as you said, it is a very important skill to have, no matter like what sector you're in. And again, going back to like our viewers who are mostly like youth who are in the impact space, it's a very good tool to have as a young impact founder or impact project founder, because even if you're not speaking to like a group of like board members or trustees or whatnot, even just speaking to like someone who you'd like to volunteer with you to sell your idea to them, like having public speaking skills is important. So yeah, thank you very much for those tips, Itofa. I'm moving on to my next question. You've spoken about change, about your background and your journey and how you've come to where you are now. But what do you think, or how do you think people can create change themselves in their communities?
Well, that's a very profound question. How can people create change in their communities? I feel like you see it's first of all inherent, or it's intrinsic before it becomes extrinsic, right? So it starts first of all with what you call your self-image. It starts with self-concept. So do you even believe that you can stir a ripple effect that will lead to change in your community? There's a psychological phenomenon called the Pygmalion or the Resultatoric effect that talks about how the reason people behave the way they do is because they think about that in a certain way, right? That's like a whole different subject, right? So first of all, for change to happen, you need to first of all believe that you are change in itself. So I tell my friends every single time, if you take me to Afghanistan today, if you take me to China tomorrow, if you take me to South Africa tomorrow, the effect you're getting in Nigeria is the same effect you'll get wherever you take me to. Why? Because it's not church on the street that makes me. I am the change. I am living, breathing church on the street. I am leading, breathing my Nigeria food bank. So before anybody even start to talk about leading change, Chizulu, understanding that you're changing yourself. So whether you go to China tomorrow, you must have hold that self-concept that you have value to bring to the table all the time. Especially people who are born in Nigeria, who are born in the global south. A narratology has been sold to us that we're disadvantaged, that we're disempowered, that we can't do so much like the people who are born in the west or in the south. But I'm here to tell you today that look, there are the likes of Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie who have done it. There are a ton of people who have done it. So I, Itofa Ivarah, I'm a living change. I'm a global asset. I'm a global solution. So wherever you take me to, you'll get that effect. And because I think, breathe, and live that way, everywhere I go, I begin to think, what solution can I bring to the table? What's my business with having a dream to build a food bank? People are building Fortune 500 companies, S&P 250 companies. Why am I going to do a food bank? Because I believe that, look, if I could bridge this gap in Nigeria, there's so many kids that can become medical doctors. There's so many people that could become music artists. There's so many people who can do incredible stuff that will topple industries and disrupt certain status quo in their economies. Because education is a powerful tool. So back to your question, change first is a self-concept. You need to believe that you are a change. And then find those things that are pain points for you, pain inflection points for you, and begin to fan it, study it, understand it, and then begin to take corresponding action. I can preach from now till tomorrow. If you don't take action, Chizulu, Atoshi, if you don't take action, and anybody who's listening, wherever part of the world you're in, if you don't take action, nothing will happen. So everything I've said was corresponding action to that problem, and you're going to be a world leader.
Thank you very much for that. I think you also answered the second question I was going to ask, which was, what does change mean to you? Kurerie in my language, Isoko, means change. And it was created to show people, specifically young people, that they could create change with their small action. Even just educating someone on a topic, or deciding that, okay, you're going to pick up litter in your community. That is change. And I love the angle that you've brought in about how change is a self-concept. And you have to believe that you are change, and you can bring change, and you can bring value. So thank you very much for that, for answering both my questions, I guess, for that, and for the call that you've given to young people to also take up this mantle, to believe that they can impact people, impact their communities. And thank you. Thank you again. And I see that if I feel like you've even answered sort of my third question as well, which was what do you believe is sort of a quote unquote winning formula for a young person who wants to make change? I guess I could summarize it, and of course if you have anything to add, please do, but I could summarize it as you saying that it's by believing that you can make change and you have value to bring, and it's by taking action. But do you have anything else to add to that question or to that?
Yeah, so I just, in a nutshell, just everything you said is pretty correct. I think it starts with self-concept, corresponding action, and then just, first of all, it's that belief system. It's that belief, because if you tell me to talk, I'll keep going back to belief system. Because Chizulu, I can give you a check of $10,000 now. I say, what are you passionate about? You want to be able to amplify the work of young people doing incredible stuff because you want other people to catch that ripple effect. That's what you're passionate about, and you believe you can do it. And yourself and Atoshi, you guys are going with the work, right? So if I give you $10,000, what would happen is that you would amplify the work you're currently doing. So you probably get some gadgets, you get some tools, you probably even start a studio, maybe blow up a YouTube channel, have a whole blown up set, so that you can make the work more qualitative and more engaging, right? Now, somebody else okay, here's $10,000, go and lead change in your community. And they will not be able to put their hands on anything concrete. So it goes back to the first point. You want to be able to have a strong, firm foundation that, look, I can change the world. It's in me. It's inherent in me. I'm not a victim. I'm not subservient. I'm an asset. That's how I think. That's just how my mind works. I'm an asset to the Nigerian economy. If you remove me and you take me to America tomorrow, bro, you guys have lost something. So, yeah.
I love that. And it goes back again to one of the points that you said, when answering one of our other questions about making sure you know your cause, and it's also making sure you know your why. by making sure you understand that you have something to bring to the table. So yeah, thank you again for that beautiful point. But now let's talk about you again. So we've spoken about you, we spoke about church on the streets, about any advice you have for young people, but we're taking it back to you again. Do you have any future plans that you'd want to tell us? First of all, about your two organizations, Church on the Streets and Niger Food Bank, and then future plans for Itofa Ivarah that we can watch out for.
Oh, great. Thank you very much. First of all, Chizu, for having me. Really, really, it's been a great, rich conversation. Future plans for Church on the Street. Our dream in the future is to be able to build a childcare center. So we have a dream, maybe in 5-7 years, by the grace of God, to be able to build one of Nigeria's first childcare center. So imagine a childcare center that has what you call like a library. We have a kitchenette. We have inside. We have like places where we could take children from rural communities and they could come, and we have a library in the childcare center. We have like a grocery spot, like a food pantry inside the childcare center. We have like a clinic in the childcare center. We have like pools and play areas, and we also have like counseling booths in the childcare center. The idea is we want to be able to be that contact point where children from rural communities who do not have any type of opportunity, we want to be that organization that opens them up to know that, look, it is possible. Imagine picking a child from Makoko community today. I don't know what part of Nigeria you're in, or even if you're in Nigeria at all. Picking a child from Makoko community and taking that child to fly Qatar Airways all the way to Doha in Qatar. Do you know what you've done to that child? Traveling is a form of education. You've expanded the creative imagination of that child. That child will begin to believe that, look, there's a life beyond Nigeria. I flew in an airplane. There's so much in front of me. What you've done is that you've stretched the imagination of that child, the elastic limit of that child. And our dream is to be that organization that can give children in rural communities those opportunities with our childcare center. Of course, we'll continue to build schools, partner with schools, continue to build STEM centers across Nigeria, local, global partnership as we continue. With my Nigeria Food Bank, we're also going to be adopting more schools into our school meal plan, eventually be able to blow the scale of, we're not even up to a year in my Nigeria Food Bank. So we're able to blow the scale of what we're doing. And, we maybe with investment, have like these huge kitchens that can serve a lot of people, have more mobile food trucks that can send food to communities, then start like an after school club where we want to be able to promote numeracy and literacy for children. Kids can come and learn things about leadership, and all that kind of stuff. That's the vision and the dream for the future, maybe 3-5 years by the grace of God. And then for me personally, I just recently got selected. You guys are hearing it for the first time. Selected for Chevening. So I have my interview in a couple of days. Yes, thank you very much. I have my interview in a couple of days. So just go and tell them my journey, my story, my dream, and trusting that God that will get selected in the eventual phase. That means I'm going to be moving on to go and finish up my master's, in international development, and be able to come back to Nigeria and blow the work we're doing by the grace of God. In the future, I may run for president in Nigeria, maybe another 12-18 years. Stories. And definitely working with the United Nations as a UN envoy to work on like global policy reforms and policy advocacy and ethical policy design as well for Nigeria. So yeah.
I love that. Big plans, and we're so excited that we've played a small in that journey. And congratulations.
Yes.
Congratulations on Chevening. That's very exciting. Wishing you the best of luck in your interview.
Thank you very much.
You get like
thank you very much.
Outcome that you hope for. And
thank you very much.
I'm really excited to see like the work that you do personally, and of course the work that you do through Church on the Street and my Niger Food Bank. But before we close, we just have a few questions before we end this great conversation that I've personally been having, and I hope that people listening have enjoyed this conversation and learned a thing or two through this conversation as well. But my next question is, how can people support Church on the Street and my Niger Food Bank? Yeah. How can people connect with you personally?
Okay, great. So we're on Instagram, we're on LinkedIn, we're on Facebook. So you could just Google Itofa Ivarah. If you Google Itofa Ivarah, it will lead you to everything that concerns my life. Itofa Ivarah. Just Google me. You would find me. And then with Church on the Street, how you could be a part of the work. We have people from all over the world who are reaching out to want to volunteer, who want to even come down to Nigeria to volunteer in the communities that we serve. That's one option. We open our volunteer window twice a year, I think June and November. That's one way. You could also support us by connecting us to partners. If you are an organization who currently have their CSR focused on education or focused on girl-child empowerment, or even giving business grants to female entrepreneurs, especially locals, where you're very good fit to partner with my Nigeria Food Bank as well. If you're like a consumable organization, you produce like perishable items, please, we'll be very happy to take your items to schools to give to children. I would love that. And as individuals as well, we want money. Because with more money, we can touch more people, right? With more money. In fact, right now, we're currently working on a pet project for my Nigeria Food Bank where we're going to schools in Abuja a couple of weeks by the grace of God. So you could support us by funding. We have, just on our website, we have a Paystack account that you could give to that. If you want to get the Nigerian account directly, we'll be happy to send you. Just send us a message on Instagram, on LinkedIn, on Twitter. We'll be sure to respond to you. So it's Church on the Street NG on Twitter. It's Church on the Street NG on Instagram. It's Church on the Street International on Facebook. It's Church on the Street NG on LinkedIn. So you can find us there, and it will be one of the best experience you've ever had, whether it's volunteering with us, supporting us, or just connecting us to somebody who probably has the resource to be a part of the work we're doing. It will mean a lot. I just want to say thank you so much to you guys for doing an incredible work. I really can't wait for the rest of the world to see the incredible things you guys are doing and more people to just be part of this amazing, beautiful work you guys have got going.
Thank you, Itofa. Thank you so much. Please feel free to check out and connect with Itofa. Check out their website, churchonthestreet.org, so you can learn more about the work that they do. And yeah, I mean, I followed you and I follow your organization on LinkedIn, and I also know your website, and I would definitely, of course, Kurerie would always be a supporter in any way we can of your work. And yeah, our last question. We've come to the end of the interview.
No, I don't want it to end. No.
But it has to, like people listening, we could always do a part 2 in the future. Maybe when you start your master's, we'd love to speak to you more about how work has progressed. And like, of course, you're always a part of the Kurerie family now. I don't think like there's any escaping right now. Everyone we've interviewed is a part of us, and we try to support them in any way we can. But alas, we have come to the end of the interview. Our final question, which we ask all our guests, it is a constant. If all the other questions change, this question isn't changing. And the question is, what are your top 3 recommendations? Now, your recommendation could be anything at all. It could be a quote, it could be a book, a website, a podcast, someone you think we should follow, a show, a movie, anything, just anything that you're enjoying right now that you'd like to share with our audience.
Okay, great. So I'm going to start with just 3 things, So everybody has to read Start With Why by Simon Sinek. Start With Why by Simon Sinek. It's a book I would recommend to everybody, especially if you're young. In this age of information dementia, you want to be able to read Start With Why by Simon Sinek. I would also, what else? Please watch TED Talks are very important. TED Talks are very, very important. Like, watch TED Talks. It would alter your paradigm, your thought paradigm, right? In a world where everybody's thinking linear, you could think in multiple folds and multiple expression, and you could question things, right? That's the second thing I'm going to recommend. And then finally, you need to learn how to harness and build relationships. I promise you, it's a skill you must have. You must know how to build relationship across board. So I would recommend you read How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. It's an incredible book. How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. Start With Why by Simon Sinek, and go and watch a lot of TED Talks. Just find whatever interests you and just listen to these people share very thought-provoking perspectives to life that would really shape you. And that's my signing out.
Yeah, nice. Thank you so much. I've actually read How to Win Friends and Influence People, so I also recommend it. But please, is there anywhere that we could watch your TED Talk?
Okay. So officially, my TED Talk hasn't been published on the TEDx website yet, or TEDx YouTube channel, but when it's ready, we're going to blow it up.
I love that. Well, we've come to the end of the interview. Thank you again, Itofa, for speaking with us. And yes, we wish you all the best in everything you do. And
thank you so much.
You need to create impact.
Thank you very much. Itoshi, Chizulu. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Hello again. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you'd like to learn more about Kurerie, you could check out our website at www.kurerie.com, and you could follow us on our social media at ma.kurerie. At Kurerie, we're focused on ensuring that we educate and empower young people to create impact and change in their communities. If you'd like to learn more about impact stories of other young people who are creating change in their communities, you could check out our previous episodes as well as season 1 of the Kurerie podcast. Thank you for listening.